You mentioned Antonio Gramsci, who was, founder of the Italian Communist Party, probably the most significant Marxist philosopher ever, perhaps even including Karl Marx himself. So we have a Marxist at the very beginning formulating some of these ideas, which, as you mentioned, filter up through the Frankfurt School and out into critical theory and out into the modern university. You today have people claiming the mantle of identity politics who are openly describing themselves as trained Marxists, specifically the leaders of the BLM organization. I see this common thread here. The common thread seems to be Karl Marx. So the common thread seems to be people who are avowedly communist. And yet when you raise that specter in the United States, people say, oh, that's a crazy conspiracy theory. Oh, you're seeing communists everywhere. That's a red scare. So is this a conspiracy theory or is it a conspiracy?
Look, Antonio Gramsci, whom you mentioned, is the one who first comes up with the idea. The fascists send him to prison to stop his brain working. Very bad idea, as we know from the example of the Apostle St. Paul and many other examples. People do a lot of good thinking in prison and a lot of good writing. So he begins to think in the late 20s and 30s, why haven't revolutions happened like Marx and Engels promised us? Only they have succeeded in only one place, a backwater of Europe, Russia in 1719, but they failed. All the revolutions have failed since 1848. He said there is no German Soviet, there is no Italian Soviet. The German Revolution failed, the Vienna Rosso failed in Italy. And he begins to say, well, the reason is that the worker has become his own oppressor. The worker has accepted all the cultural givens of the so-called oppressor class. He has accepted the family, religion, the economic system, and all the institutions. So Antonio Gramsci, this is his theory of cultural hegemony. We need to destroy this hegemonic narrative and replace it with a counter narrative. This is what we're seeing today. As you said, we're seeing, the creator of the 1619 Project says this is about replacing the narrative of America. A further refinement comes with the Frankfurt School, which second president Max Horkheimer writes a book in 1937, which pronounces, first comes up with the idea of critical theory. Critical theory is an unremitting attack on all the norms of the West. Martin Jay, who wrote a very good book on the Frankfurt School, notes that they almost completely ignored the Soviet Union. There were no attacks on Stalin, even at the height of the famines, even at the height of the show trials and all the massacres. It's really an unremitting attack on the Western norms, and then American norms. And what do you have today on campus? You have critical theory is something that it has infiltrated every faculty. If you're in law school, you have to study critical legal theory. If you're in other places, you have to study critical race theory. All the ethnic study departments, which was started in the 60s by in the 70s actually, by these activists, are about replacing the narrative. Angela Davis, the former Black Panther member of the Communist Party USA, who was taught directly by Herbert Marcuse at Brandeis in the 60s. Herbert Marcuse is another one of these gurus of the New Left. She says that ethnic studies are the intellectual arm of the revolution. She knows what she's saying, and she's saying openly. So I think that we should take it seriously when we see today what is happening, repeating the same phrases that these neo-Marxists, these cultural Marxists, used in the 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s.